Right, I think we're live, and we're live. Good evening to anyone who is watching. This week, after a 3-week hiatus, I guess, we're doing a response to Prime Minister's questions, and this one was a bit of a surprise. I kind of expected the subject matter to be focused on government spending, or lack thereof. I expected it to be... oh, sorry, messages. I expected it to be about Brexit. It was not. I expected it to be about the NHS, and yet again, it was not. Which surprised me, to be honest, because I kind of had this... those topics have made their rounds. They've done their rounds, sorry, and they've been continuing to do so for months. Maybe perhaps talk about the airstrikes. No, sorry, targeted military action, which actually raises a rather interesting video I saw. During the what was a total of 9 hours of debates about this, where the Prime Minister was held to account, Jacob Rees-Mogg made a good point, something I hadn't considered. And it was about the separation of the legislative office and the executive office. And that intrigued me. I don't agree with it entirely. I think there are certain military circumstances where it should go before Parliament. This is one of those. And when she is held to account, it will be because her action was entirely predicated on not enough evidence. But we will get into that later. Anyway, today's subject is about what is more commonly known as the Windrush generation. And I have some articles I will go through, as and when the questions relevant to PMQs come up, because there's been an interesting fallout. Including an article that I wished I'd linked, but it's on my tablet. Yeah. So let me just quickly pull the chat up, because otherwise I can't see you guys. Well, I can, but yes, I'm special like that. Where is it? There it is. Hello to Diskanar, Steam, and Socky. I know you're in the voice chat on Discord, Diskanar, but I had to be muted while I did something else. And had family over, which is rather annoying. Yes, tablet, because it also popped up on my phone, but the tablet has a bigger screen. I have this briefing app, it's called. I don't think it's an app, I don't know what it is, but this briefing thing just pops up random news articles, and this one happens to coincide quite nicely with the topic. Hello, Tailed Feature. I might moan about your precious SMP later. I can't remember what Ian Blackford asked anyway. I just remember looking at him and thinking, fuck me, you're fat. Anyway, let's update something. Maybe. I don't know what it's called. There it is. Right, yeah, let's dive into this because it's interesting. I might, on a regular basis, take that down because I have lots of tabs open on the same thing and I can't bother to separate them. So, in theory, you should hear this quite well. Yeah. Oh, does it look okay? Let me just check. Sorry, something cropped. Yeah, it's fine.
Order. Questions to the Prime Minister.
Faggot.
Neil O'Brien. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, that was time.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this week the UK plays host to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
This Commonwealth thing, by the way, does actually set the entire tone because the Windrush scandal, as it's called now, the Windrush generation is a direct connection, or has one, to the Commonwealth.
I know the whole House will want to join me in welcoming leaders from 52 countries to London.
All that kneel before us.
Who collectively represent a third of the world's population.
That means jack shit.
Over the coming days, we will discuss a range of shared priorities, from oceans and cyber security to continuing to tackle malaria and ensuring all children have access to 12 years of quality education. With 60% of the Commonwealth under the age of 30, the summit will have a particular
Damn, there was a baby boomer bit going on there, wasn't there?
Focus on how we revitalise the organisation to ensure its continuing relevance, especially for young people. Meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Oh, so boring. So, on the subject of the Commonwealth, because I actually quite like the Commonwealth, I like the Commonwealth Games especially. It's like a warm-up to the Olympics. Yeah. I liked it for the boxing anyway. Maybe that's just me though. But the Commonwealth thing's quite interesting because there are a lot of countries that are being played host to right now, and with this scandal, this Windrush thing, I'm wondering how many of those leaders who have people that are affected by this negatively are on her case every bloody day for all the shit that's going on. Because it does make me wonder. Right, sorry.
Neil O'Brien.
Mr. Speaker, the whole House will be aware of the stories of people who came to this country from the Commonwealth more than 45 years ago. People who are facing the anxiety of being asked for documents they cannot provide to prove their right to reside in the country that they call home. Will the Prime Minister update the House on what she and the government are doing to provide reassurance in these cases?
This also has brought up a number of issues about the rights of EU workers in this country. Now, the government has on multiple times said and stated that it supports those that work here being given the right to stay here. However, there are some rather shady goings-on with regards to this Windrush thing, and it's going to get mentioned, and when it does, that basically fucks Theresa May. And possibly Amber Rudd, which is the article I mentioned that's on my tablet, because it's stupid. It really is. I don't understand why someone would be so reckless and think that they weren't going to, get caught. So let's just see what she says on this. I think she just apologises, and that's about it, really.
Prime Minister.
My honourable friend has raised a very important issue which I know has caused a great deal of concern and anxiety, so I would like to update the House. People in the Windrush generation who came here from Commonwealth countries have built a life here. They've made a massive contribution to the country. These people are British. They are part of us. And I want to be absolutely clear. That we have no intention of asking anyone to leave who has the right to remain here.
However, that isn't what has been happening. People are being kicked out. There is a case of a man, Jimmy something. I can't remember the last name, but he was carted out. It's Mangolan, I think. And then this led to some rather interesting incidents with G4S, a security company. 3 of them subdued him, and he died because of it. I think he was only in his 40s, so it was a bit of a surprise. Those same men for G4S, they were then found not guilty of manslaughter. A lot of people are ignoring that, but they do get quite triggered by the thought of people being kicked out for whatever reason. I do believe he was here legally, though, so it's quite an interesting to hear people talk in this sort of light about how they're here legally, they should stay here, but the actions don't quite match the words. Miss Steam, my dad was an illegal immigrant. It's I-M-M-I. Okay. Until he got married to his 3rd wife. Is his 3rd wife your mother? Damn, your dad's a slut.
And for those who have mistakenly received...
Right, I'm going to focus on something here for a second. Ignore the man in the middle, Theresa May, and the woman on the right, Amber Rudd. Theresa May was Home Secretary before she became PM, and Amber Rudd is the current Home Secretary. This is important, and it will come up later.
...received letters challenging them. I want to say apologise to them, and I want to say sorry to anyone who has confusion or anxiety felt as a result of this.
I will admit, any politician that's willing to stand up at the dispatch box and apologise and not make excuses, it takes some level of integrity. Whether you agree with her or not, or whether she's about to make excuses, I think she might later. Maybe she does now, I actually can't remember. I say that, I only watched this once, and I just tuned it out. But anyone who's willing to apologise for a genuine fuck up genuinely has some integrity, and you have to respect that. Even though there are going to be a number of questions that come up from Corbyn later that are going to make you think, yeah, you done gone goofed up, bitch.
But I want to be clear with the House how this has arisen. Those
Oh, it took 10 seconds.
Commonwealth citizens.
Hello, Carillius.
Yes.
The House must calm down. The Prime Minister is responding to the question. There will be a very full opportunity for questioning of the Prime Minister on this occasion, as there is on every occasion. But the questions must be heard and the answers must be heard. The Prime Minister.
Thank you. Let me update the House on how this has arisen. Those Commonwealth citizens who arrived before 1973 and were settled here have a right conferred by the 1971 Immigration Act to live in the UK. They were not required to take any action with the Home Office to document their status. The overwhelming majority already have the immigration documents they need, but there are some who, through no fault of their own, do not. And those are the people we're working hard to help now. My right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has made clear a new dedicated team. A new dedicated team is being set up to help these people evidence their right to be here and access services, and it will aim to resolve cases within 2 weeks once the evidence has been put together.
The problem that will arise from this will be that certain evidence has gone kind of missing, and I think it makes it very hard to confirm or prove things. Now, the Immigration Act, I've just had to pull it up because I've forgotten about it. Oh, fucking hell, there's so much of it. Ah, fuck that. Where's the actual basic synopsis? It's basically... the current one is called the Immigration Act of 2016. It focuses on the labour market and illegal working. It doesn't mean much, really. But it basically gave people rights, and I think... Oh, I believe you are entitled to citizenship after a certain number of years anyway. Not that you have to have citizenship to be here, let's face it. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. And in a minute, Corbyn... I think... Let's see, I've been doing this for, what, 2.5, 3 months now on PMQs? And I think only once has Corbyn beaten May. Like, convincingly annihilated her. And I think that was the last one. And I think he wins this one as well. Which is a sad day, isn't it? When Corbyn starts to win. And I don't want to knock the man too much. I mean, he does a fantastic job of basically destroying himself with his own shitty arguments. And his policies, which are laughable. But if you can't beat him, what the hell are you doing? I know a lot of people then say, well, we should have Mogg in charge. I don't know if he'd be any better, but I think he'd be a lot more composed. That's a certainty. May is... I don't know if that's maybe a... I don't want to be sexist, but maybe it's a old frail lady thing, because unfortunately her predecessor, the female one anyway, was certainly not as easy to be pushed about. But she is. And she's also a hypocrite. She's been caught out, it's all over Twitter actually now, of videos of her saying, you know, how she doesn't get how some MPs don't take responsibility for their mistakes. But then she's made a number of mistakes and doesn't take responsibility. She tries to then just say, oh, well, the last Labour government did this. It's not. It's not an argument. Hello to Count Dibula, Minnie the Spat, and Carlos. Did she apologise for what happened in Telford? No. No one has. It's not male-female thing, it's just this female sucks at this game. Quite right. That's probably a better summary. She does suck at this. And it's actually, interestingly, whenever she's not here, and then Corbyn doesn't have to be here either, the guy on her left there, the bald guy, he will take her place. And Emily Thornberry will take Corbyn's place. It was Angela Davis. Both of those two, Emily Thornberry and Angela Davis, unflappable. I mean, they'll raise their voice, they'll crack a joke, be a bit snide, and he's cool as a cucumber. That guy. Maybe he should do it more often.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, I raised a case of Albert Thompson, a man who has lived and worked here for decades, paid his taxes, and yet been denied National Health Service treatment. The Prime Minister brushed it off.
That's not true. Actually, she said, I would like you to write to me with this particular case so she could address it specifically. I remember this, because I remember when this cropped up, I went back through the PMQs to find it. And she did in fact respond by saying, I would like you to write, because if I remember correctly, it also finished with her pointing out that he had 4 or 5 months ago mentioned another case and he didn't write to her, and he replied, I believe it got resolved, something, influence from this chamber, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Yes, I'm not a fan of him either, but while he's easily misled, excuse me, his heart is in the right place. He is pressing on. Actually, this is one of the few times he is going to absolutely hammer her with certain accusations, and this really bugs me, because obviously I don't want him to win. I don't want May to win, because she's fucking useless. Come on, the House of Lords voted an amendment in for the bloody EU withdrawal bill. I'm sorry, you let some elitist fucks do that? Are you kidding me? I recovered that. I spoke about that last night on this channel in a very informal, even more informal than usual stream. So let's focus on this.
Will she say what she will now do to ensure that Mr. Thompson gets the cancer treatment he urgently needs and is entitled to?
Prime Minister.
The right honourable gentleman did indeed raise the case of Albert Thompson. It was not brushed off. The Home Office... No. The Home Office have been in contact with Mr. Thompson's representatives. First of all, I want to make one point very clear, that no urgent treatment should be withheld by the NHS, regardless of ability or willingness to pay.
I'm just causing a break in that sort of a copyright claim, even though I don't believe UK Parliament would actually do that. But to address Mini Lisper, I just wish he was stronger for decent opposition, as the whole point of opposition is supposed to be. They're meant to challenge the Prime Minister, actually challenge the Prime Minister, and half the time, certainly since I started doing this, the questions have been trivial. I believe them to be trivial. They always end with a reference to how something is in crisis. In fact, I don't know if Jeremy Corbyn says that this time, because it was so focused on this Windrush scandal. Maybe not this question, I believe the next ones are, though. And that when that happens, we will then go in through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 12 odd tabs I've got for this, with a couple of articles, because I didn't really see the point. I didn't have to do too much research, but certainly getting a decent history lesson and breakdown is quite handy. And this guy is a colossal bellend. His name is Jeremy Hunt. He is the Health Secretary, I believe. He's a very elitist. He has quite a normal, regular male voice, very powerful actually. But this arrogant fuck is so annoying, and he would lie. He would lie to win. It's quite sad, really. But for a long time, he froze NHS pay. He had to, because of what he had to do, to keep the NHS going, ticking over. He had to make some very difficult choices, and that sucked. But he's very unpopular because of it. I believe he also has a royal connection, like he's related to them in some way. And a lot of people believe that in some way means that he's even more of a snob. I don't know if that's true or not.
I also want to make clear that, as it happens, Mr. Thompson is not part of the Windrush generation that I have just spoken about in answer to the first question. And finally, clinicians have been looking at Mr. Thompson's case, and he will be receiving the treatment he needs.
And I hope he gets all the treatment he needs, absolutely. Mini Lisper, he likes to buy flats. Yes, he is one of those people who recently featured in the news, certainly about the amount of money he was making outside of Parliament due to property investments. Let's call it that. Loosely. Property investments. Let's continue.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Well, Mr. Speaker, on the 20th of March, the Prime Minister wrote to me stating, while I sympathise with Mr. Thompson, we encourage him to make the appropriate application and provide evidence of his settled status here.
Damn. That came back to bite her on the ass. That actually does sound more like he's been fobbed off. Also falls in line with the Windrush thing. So that's not going to do well for her, is it? But I just Jeremy Corbyn, if you ever get a chance to see this, I would very much like you to publish that letter. Diane Abbott recently published a letter that she sent to Theresa May. Now, the problem with that letter is when she put it on Twitter, she took a shit image. The quality resolution is horrific. If I zoom in, I still can barely read it. I might try and read it later. I've got the tab open for it. But it's not easy. And it's in reference to Windrush, so we will get to that as and when it crops up.
Yesterday we learnt that in 2010 the Home Office destroyed landing cards for a generation of Commonwealth citizens, and so have told people we can't find you in our system.
This, by the way, is now what the Windrush scandal is. It's those cards. That is the whole thing. And this is where Theresa May gets absolutely fucked. Okay, I'm not even kidding. We're going to get to it soon enough, along with the history of it, because it's relevant, interesting. But yeah, she doesn't win this.
Did the Prime Minister, the then Home Secretary, sign off that decision?
Prime Minister.
No, the decision to destroy the landing cards was taken in 2009 under a Labour government.
Ooh, sounds like she burnt him. Yeah, no, not quite. And I think now would be a good time for me to get rid of this, because I don't have the images open, but I have put some sources in the description. So, where's my tab? Right, we'll get to that one later. Okay, so I'm going to first of all read from the BBC article of what the Windrush generation are. So the Prime Minister has apologised to Caribbean leaders over deportation threats made to the children of Commonwealth citizens who, despite living and working in the UK for decades, have been told they are living here illegally because of a lack of official paperwork. Some of that paperwork has gone missing. That is the whole thing. And the Windrush generation, as they've been called, are those that arrived in the UK between 1948 and 1971 from Caribbean countries. Those they're given that label. It is basically a reference to the ship MV Empire Windrush, which arrived at Tilbury Docks, Essex, on the 22nd of June 1948, bringing workers from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago and other islands as a response to post-war labour shortages in the UK. Not surprising at all. I guess if we had a war these days, our replacement workforce would be, well, probably be the Muslims that come from Syria, those quotes refugees. They're actually just economic migrants. Now, there is a lovely little pie chart. You've got Commonwealth migrants arriving in the UK before 1971, and this is a 2017 estimate of current population. Non-UK nationals, 57,000 are likely to be affected. UK nationals, 467,000 unlikely to be affected. Now, the breakdown for the non-UK nationals would be 15,000 Jamaican, 13,000 India, and then 29,000 other. Those others would include Pakistan, Kenya, and South Africa. And this source is taken from the Migration Observatory Analysis of Labour Force Survey, which I will, of course, stick in the description at the end. Right, where is it? Oh yes, the influx ended with the 1971 Immigration Act, when Commonwealth citizens already living in the UK were given indefinite leave to remain. After this, a British passport holder born overseas could only settle in the UK if they firstly had a work permit and secondly could prove that a parent or grandparent had been born in the UK. Now, many of the arrivals became manual workers, cleaners, drivers and nurses, and some broke new ground in representing Black Britons in society. The Labour MP David Lammy, whose parents arrived in the UK from Guyana, describes himself as a proud son of the Windrush. Congratulations to you. I'm actually pretty sure I just pronounced the country wrong. The Home Office, though, did not keep a record of those granted leave to remain or issue any paperwork confirming it, which makes it difficult for Windrush arrivals to prove they are here legally, which is the major problem. And then, of course, with our issues with migration and migrant numbers, illegal migrants, people who come here legally and so on, if without the strict documentation that we have now, but enforced then, it's just not going to work. People are going to be very hard to prove themselves. Okay. In 2010, landing cards belonging to Windrush migrants were destroyed by the Home Office. Now, the Conservatives were voted in 2010, so it becomes it's a question now for, were they destroyed by the Labour government before they left, or by the Conservatives who then came in? Where is the... Oh, that's one source. Where is the reference to the cards? Oh yeah, right. So the Home Office has said it is looking at 49 cases as a result of calls over the course of Tuesday. And while Theresa May has apologised, Labour has said this is shocking, obviously, accusing the Home Office, which was run at the time by Theresa May, of getting rid of the very records that could have demonstrated their right to remain. Now, obviously, Theresa May is saying it's 2009, but if I remember correctly, there is actually a... Oh, where is it? Here we are. Home Office spokesperson, registration slips. I will actually put this in the chat, because this particular item is relevant for all of you, and if you're interested in reading it, then go for it. No, I don't even have a I don't have mod power on this. Fuck you! I'll switch account. It's fine. There we go. Open the chat. Take your time, please. I'm surprised that people that landed don't have any documents themselves. Well, they didn't have to. That's the thing. And obviously, as they're really old now, they don't need to. You know, they didn't need to because they're now at the age of their twilight years. The image. Where is it? Is it this one? No. No. Right. Registration slips provided details of an individual's date of entry. They did not provide any reliable evidence relating to ongoing residence in the UK or their immigration status, so it would be misleading and inaccurate to suggest that registration slips would therefore have a bearing on immigration cases whereby Commonwealth citizens are proving residency in the UK. There's a background to this. In 2010, the decision was taken by the UK Board Agency to securely dispose of some documents known as registration slips. Under the Data Protection Act 1998, the Home Office has a legal obligation to ensure that the personal data it holds is not kept for longer than is necessary. These records had limited use, and retaining these records would have represented a potential breach of these principles. This is in line with the ICO guidance. That is not very well written. This decision was taken in line with the 4th and 5th data protection principles, i.e. to ensure personal data is held accurate, and up to date, and should not be kept for longer than necessary. Well, these people are still alive, so they have to be kept. By deciding immigration cases, the Home Office considers alternative evidence, such as tax records, utility bills, and tenancy agreements, as evidence of ongoing residency in the UK in these exceptional circumstances. So, if we're able to get hold of those, without the original cards that have gone missing, there's a way of proving these people have been here, and rightfully so. However, those cards were pretty much the ace in the hole. They guaranteed it. That said, they should not have destroyed them. It is proven and now known it was in 2010 they were destroyed, not 2009. That's fine, Saki. You don't have to troll. But this means that it was Theresa May's Home Office that dealt it, and not... I don't know who the Home Office guy was then. It was probably a guy. I don't know who. I don't care either. In any case, maybe it was Blunkett who was blind. Maybe. Doesn't matter. It does mean, though, that records that should not have been destroyed were destroyed wrongfully, and this has created additional pressure on people that shouldn't happen. And just for the sake of it, I mentioned earlier an Angolan man that was deported. His name was Jimmy Mubenga, and he was only, oh god, he was young. How old was he? 40 something, I think. I can't remember. 46. There it is. Got it. Right. Close that tab. Don't need it. There was something else. Oh no, that's. Oh right, yeah, okay. There was a thing I saw on Twitter, on Diane Abbott's Twitter. This is another image that was of interest, and it kind of made me wonder what the point was. What am I looking at in the chat? Sorry. Fine, you can have one. Cringe for the cringe god, yes. Chaos is fine. I won't hold it against you. Although I do really want to buy some more Stormcast. I found there is one shop in town that sells Warhammer, but it's not Games Workshop. It's like a novelty shop, and they have some paladins. So if I can, I'm gonna wait until I get paid or something and get those, because I wouldn't mind having something else to paint for the next couple of weeks. I've got no one here due to my sister going away for hospital stuff. Anyway, there was something I wanted to show. Oh yeah, the image is of bloody tabs. It is of it's a conversation. It's taken from Diane Abbott's Twitter, and it says here it's a quote from Jeremy Corbyn. I will vote against the bill on third reading for a large number of reasons. We have ordained that the Home Secretary will have the executive power to take away citizenship in the future and to create a generation of stateless people. The handing over of that power is, I think, a very dangerous thing for any parliament to do. This is, I believe, a reference to the EU and right of the people here. Because of the Windrush scandal, this obviously places extra emphasis on Brexit, which I think is... you can say fuck Stormcast if you want, I don't mind. I'm just enjoying the additional matte gold styles that I'm able to paint. It's just been a while since I painted, so it's quite nice to do that again. Anyway, back to this little image. We have a number of other serious concerns about the bill, such as those covered in the points raised by my right honourable friend, the member for Hayes and Harlington, the communist John McDonnell, about the forced removal of people, the death of Jimmy Mubenga, who I talked about a moment ago, which was mentioned by the honourable member for Brent Central, someone I'd never heard of. The use of the detention system, which is a detention system. I'm not sure what the problem is with that. The denial of healthcare access, the problems of forcing landlords to become agents of the Home Office, and the reality of life for those who have legitimately sought asylum in and then here, this country. The rest of it's just usual spiel from Jeremy Corbyn about how something's in crisis. Now, there's a petition here. What's this? Oh yeah, I got a email from Labour earlier, and this made me laugh. It's almost like a petition. It says demand for the Windrush generation. Okay, the Home Office have said that they have wrongfully deported people from the Windrush generation, citizens who have called the UK their home for decades, whose lives have been thrown into uncertainty after this catastrophic error. And then it goes on to talk about how we need to urge the government to do stuff. Fuck Warhammer. Terrible dibula. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. Now, what else was there? Did I pull up that Diane Abbott thing? Right, now, since the destruction of the landing cards, there was an article about this. Theresa May's hit back at the at Labour over landing cards. She said that the decision to destroy the landing cards of Windrush migrants was taken under Labour. But, as we now know, it happened in 2010 under Conservatives. Disputed the claim, said that the decision was taken in 2010 is demanding clarification from Miss May and the current Home Secretary Amber Rudd. So, do I hear a cat? I think I do. Go away. So for those that don't know, the landing cards were filled in by Commonwealth citizens arriving from the West Indies and elsewhere, and were used by officials to help subsequent generations prove they had a right to remain in the UK. I think we're now in this position where if you're born here, you have citizenship, which is very different, apparently different to how it was done then. I think that was a change in the Immigration Act, kind of, I think. The decision to destroy the cards themselves was taken in October 2010 after the coalition came into power. Mrs. May was not involved in the decision, which was taken at an official level. Right. She was in the cabinet, so actually she knew damn well what was going on. And the rest of that article is nonsense. It just covers what I've already talked about. I believe I've covered all that and can now go back to... Oh, okay. I'm going to try and read something. It's a letter from... Oh, it's blurred. Okay. Diane Abbott, if you ever see this, I would like to know... Wait, what? There's a Primarch model of Omegon? No, there isn't. There can't be. Forge World, it must be. No, there can't be. If there is, I need it. Because I've been waiting for months to go and get a Primarch. If there is one of me, I would actually be over the moon, and I desperately want to get it. Character series. I'm sorry, this distraction. No, Rogel Dawn's the newest one. Is this on Games Workshop? You've got me confused now. It doesn't matter. I will try and read Diane Abbott's letter to Theresa May, because this is, if you wear glasses and you take them off, this is what you see. It's just blurred. I will put a link to this. I will put a link to this in the chat for those that are interested, because you know it is a difficult image to see. I've taken it from her Twitter. Noob with a brush, I have not seen it, but if you have a link to an image for me, please give it to me on Twitter, because I desperately want it. Like, I have intentionally waited for months to not get a Primarch model, and the reason why is because I wanted me. I wanted my model, and I've waited because of that. But in any case, the image... Oh, okay. Alfarius leak. Fine, let's have a look. I assume he's holding... Oh, look at that. Oh, that is gorgeous. Oh, I want it so badly. Oh dear. I will need that in my life and desperately want it. Okay, that's just going to make me very upset because I won't be able to afford it. So, the letter reads, Dear Prime Minister, the treatment of the Windrush generation by your government has been shameful in its it's something disregard for human decency. It might say scant disregard for human decency. The scandal reached new depths today over the timing of the decision to destroy the Windrush-era landing cards. The media were told yesterday the decision was taken in 2010 but at Prime Minister's questions you tried to shift the blame onto the last Labour government, only to be undermined minutes later by your own spokesperson who said it was an operational decision taken in 2010. The landing cards became relevant when you, as Home Secretary, decided to generate what you proudly described as a hostile environment for migrants. She did, actually. There's a video quote of that. You have placed a number of those suspected of being migrants or proving otherwise. You did so knowing that key evidence they might use had already been destroyed by the Home Office. Your change of the law in 2014 also means that members of the Windrush generation faced a... I can't read that word. Loss of their protections against deportation, possibly. At the third reading of the immigration bill in January 2014, I asked whether you had given any thought to the effect your measures could have on people who were... Oh god, I can't read that word. British nationals, but might be regarded as immigrants. Your response was, we have given a great deal of thought to the way in which our measures will operate. If you had given a great deal of thought, too thin? Oh, I can't read that. No, to this. You will have foreseen the entirely predictable consequences of your policy, or perhaps you gave less thought than you claimed. Whichever is true, it is clear now that you must immediately cease your hostile environment policy and initiate a full review of it. We still await details about how many people have been wrongly deported, when, where to, and what arrangements you are making to compensate them, and others who have not been deported but have been significantly affected financially and in health terms, and offer to bring them back home if that is their wish. Yeah, I'm going to cry, I think, because I think I might just cry instead, because I really want that miniature. Anyway, let's continue a PMQ, because the image of Alfarius makes me sad. Oh, it actually makes me really sad. Let's close that, put that there, and open that. Right. So in a minute we're going to see a back pedal. Do it if you want, Saki. It's your money to waste.
Mr. Speaker, all the evidence is
Order, I said the Prime Minister must be heard, the Leader of the Opposition must be heard, and he will be. Jeremy Corbyn.
all the evidence
Order! There was a lot of this yesterday, very noisy and extremely stupid barracking.
It is quite stupid, petulant, pathetic, pouty, and quite frankly immature as fuck.
It must stop now.
Because they think they've actually got a win here. Problem is, they're about to suffer a loss. They're going to take a big L on this one.
That is the end of the matter. The public absolutely despise that type of behaviour from wherever in the House it takes place.
I don't think Davy the House has ever been different. I don't call him. He doesn't call him Commie Corbyn. No, he doesn't do that.
Cut it out and grow up, Jeremy Corbyn.
Could I remind the Prime Minister it was her government that created, in quotes, a really hostile environment for immigrants, and her government that introduced the 2014 Immigration Act. Mr. Speaker, I think we need some absolute clarity on the question of the destruction of the landing cards, and if she's trying to blame officials, I remind her of what she said in 2004 when she said she was sick and tired of government ministers who simply blame other people when things go wrong. Does she stand by that advice?
Mr.
The Right Honourable Gentleman asked me if the decision to destroy the landing cards, had been taken in my time as Home Secretary. The decision to destroy the landing cards was taken in 2009, and as I seem to recall, in 2009 it was a Labour Home Secretary who was in position.
I would point out that when she, between the time she was actually elected to office and when they were destroyed, there was ample opportunity to stop it. There would have been a list of things for her to note what were going to be destroyed and such records. She could have just said no. Is that Diana Jeremy's love child? Well,
Mr. Speaker, it was under a Tory government, and she was Home Secretary at that time. And that is what is causing such pain and such stress to a whole generation. And on Monday, the Home Secretary told the House, I'm concerned that the Home Office has become too concerned with policy and strategy and sometimes loses sight of the individual. Who does the Prime Minister think is to blame for this? The current Home Secretary or her predecessor?
Prime Minister.
the correct answer would be the predecessor. But I do want to quickly talk about the 2014 Immigration Act. It has obviously since been reformed, but it basically focuses on removal of persons unlawfully in the UK. There was more to it. Where is it? There it is. The powers of the immigration officers and then some nonsense about biometrics. But I think there's also penalty notices, which were certainly criticised. But the powers of the immigration officers, like enforcement powers, they bugged people, along with the removal elements. So I'm going to quickly go through that. Removal of persons unlawfully in the United Kingdom. A person may be removed from the UK under the authority of the Secretary of State or an immigration officer if the person requires leave to enter or remain in the UK but does not have it. Right. Where a person is liable to be or has been removed from the UK under subsection 1, a member of that person's family who meets the following 3 conditions may also be removed from the UK under the authority of the Secretary of State or an immigration officer. The first condition is that the family is the person's partner, child, in a case where the person is a child, parent, or an adult dependent relative of the person. Second condition is that in a case where the family has leave to enter or remain in the UK, the leave was granted on the basis that his or her family life is with the person. In a case where the family does not have leave to enter or remain in the UK, in the option of the Secretary of State or immigration officer, the family member would not, on making an application for such leave, be granted leave in his or her own right, but would be granted leave on the basis of his or her family life with the person if that person had leave to enter or remain. The third condition is that the family member is neither a British citizen nor is he or she entitled to enter or remain in the UK by virtue of an enforceable EU right. This will yeah, that's going to change. Or any provision made under Section 2 of the European Communities Act of 1972. Right. What was that? Sorry, stupid Twitter. I would cover enforcement powers, but there's nothing on that. But that I know was criticised quite heavily during the something committees. It was criticised quite heavily. What's this? Just give them shanks and sort it. Let's see. Sounds like Americans right now. You did it. No, you did it. Fucking yeah, it is. Give them shanks. Go for it. Why not? It could be fun.
Say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Home Office is a great Department of State which touches people's lives every day in a whole variety of ways. My right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, has been swift in responding to this issue of the unfortunate confusion and anxiety for which we have apologised, which has arisen from the Windrush generation. The Right Honourable Gentleman referred earlier to action that we had taken as a Conservative government to deal with illegal immigration. Can I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman that I think it is absolutely right that we ensure that people who access our services that are paid for by taxpayers, that are relied on by people living in this country, have a right to do so, that we take action against people who are here illegally. The Windrush generation are here legally. They have a right to be here. They are British. But if he wants to question the issue of taking action against illegal immigration, I suggest he has a conversation with the former Shadow Home Secretary, the Right Honourable Member for Normanton, Castleford and Pontefract, who in 2013 said, "We need much stronger action from government to bring illegal immigration down."
Yeah, that person wasn't very popular because, you know, they wanted to bring the numbers down, and no government seems to want to do that. They love their cultural enrichment after all. Yeah, they probably do. I'm thinking now that I've seen that Alfarius miniature, by the way, I'm going to change the Streamlabs thing at the top to Alfarius. Yes. And Mim, stop tweeting at me.
Mr. Speaker, this isn't about illegal immigration. This is about Commonwealth citizens who had every right to be here. cases like Mr. Thompson's have occurred because it was Home Office policy in 2012 to create the really hostile environment for migrants. And she was the Home Secretary that sent Home Office vans around Brent telling migrants to go home. Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Immigration Minister said that some British citizens had been deported in error. The Home Secretary didn't know and then asked Commonwealth High Commissioners if they knew of any cases. So does the Prime Minister know how many British citizens have been wrongly deported, where to, and what provisions she's made to bring them back home to Britain?
Just before this evening gets answered, we did actually address that earlier with a number of people who are being displaced. There isn't a definitive number, that's the problem. There are, I believe, 49 cases that are currently being looked at, but there is 59,000 people to look at. I don't see that as being something that can be immediately dealt with. Yeah, when your politicians act like children, they do a fantastic job of it, Dibs. I saw that in the State of the Union. It was quite embarrassing.
Well, as the immigration has made clear, we apologise unreservedly for the distress that's being caused to anyone who may have been told incorrectly that they do not have the right to be in the UK. We're not aware of any specific cases of a person being removed from the UK in these circumstances, and we have absolutely no intention of asking anyone to leave who has the right to remain here. But the work will be done by the Home Office to reach out to those from this Windrush generation who maybe do not have the necessary documentation to ensure that that is provided. There will be no cost to them. Nobody will be out of pocket as a result of this. There is a difference between the Windrush generation, who are British, who are part of us, who have a right to be here, and we want to ensure that we give them the reassurance of that right, and those other people who are here illegally. And I think it is absolutely...
There is a key point here that I'm going to interrupt her for. There are some people that did come here illegally then. Those people do need to be found. Yes, they might have been here so long that we may as well just let them stay, but I don't think anyone should just get off because you've been here. I think that's going to be a very difficult job for the Home Office.
Absolutely right that the government should make every effort to ensure that people who access our services have a right to do so, and that we take action against people who are here illegally.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Mr. Speaker, I'm informed that Mr. Albert Thompson has still not been informed when he will be getting the treatment he obviously needs as a matter of urgency. Doesn't the Home Office keep records? It's been months since these cases were first brought to the government's attention. We know of at least 2 British citizens languishing in detention centres in error, and this morning the Jamaican Prime Minister has said he knows of people who are unable to return to Britain. Mr. Speaker, this is a shameful episode, and the responsibility for it lies firmly at the Prime Minister's door. Her pandering to bogus immigration targets led to a hostile environment from people who are contributing to our country. It led to British citizens being denied NHS treatment, losing their jobs, homes and pensions, thrown into detention centres like criminals, and even deported. Vital historical records shredded, and ministers blaming officials. Mr. Speaker, the Windrush generation came to our country after the war to rebuild our nation that had been so devastated by war.
Yes, maybe we should have done that in the 1920s. Then we wouldn't have had to give men and women the vote. Just saying.
Isn't the truth? Isn't the truth, Mr. Speaker, that under her, the Home Office became heartless and hopeless? And doesn't she now run a government that is both callous and incompetent?
It's a terrible question, but I'll be honest, he pretty much wins this. Just going to say it now. And now we have a fantastic opportunity. I'm going to pull up that article I said came up on my tablet. So there's a call for Amber Rudd to resign as a mother of the Windrush system blames passport battle for her son's death. She's been asked after it emerged that one of the systems, someone basically suddenly died over this whole thing, and so Labour MPs have said the Home Secretary should do the honourable thing after the news of the death, which I don't think she should resign. I certainly think a statement should be made and an apology issued, because that is a completely disrespectful thing. For that person to die left in such a state, it is quite bad. I don't need to look at that anymore. But there was another article about, if it opens, it's from Reuters. Okay. As it prepares to leave the European Union. Oh, don't leave it so near. Britain's attempts to revitalise links with former colonies at a lavish summit in London has been overshadowed by outrage over the Prime Minister's treatment of Commonwealth migrants. Yeah. The Jamaican Prime Minister has said it's a matter of denial of the dignity of citizenship which really cannot be restored. I would love to see an interaction with these two now, because I bet he flays her. He also said it is only fair. Speaking alongside May at the Commonwealth meeting, Holness, the Prime Minister for Jamaica, hoped for speedy implementation of the government's proposals to fix the crisis. I don't know what the proposals are, but I'm very intrigued. I think that actually might be a reference to the TV licence and tenancy agreements going back decades. It is only fair. It will lead to security, certainly for those who have been affected, and it is the kind of inclusive prosperity for which we stand as Commonwealth peoples. Basically, it's that whole promoting global Britain while trying to revive the Commonwealth, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a fantastic idea to make us more global again, and the Commonwealth is a fantastic fallback on us not wanting to be globalists by also being globalists, which I think is quite amusing. So let's continue, because she's going to get a shitty answer, but we'll get to it. Let's get over it and move on.
Prime Minister!
As I have said, the Windrush generation did come here after the war. They did help to build this country. Many of them worked in our public services. They contributed. They have a right to be here. They are British. And that is why we are working with those who have no documentation to ensure that they have that provided for them. The decision was taken in 1971 not to require them to have documentation. That's what's led to the problem that we now see in relation to the anxiety for these people. But the Right Honourable Gentleman talks. The Right Honourable...
Just before I let her finish, I actually want to go find out which government was in power in 1971. 1971 UK. General election 1970. Conservatives. Lol. Nice. Anyway, let's carry on, because I'm nearly done with this anyway.
Gentleman talks about being callous and having a disregard for people. I have to say to him that I am the Prime Minister who initiated the race disparity audit, which said, what are we doing in this country to ensure that people have equal opportunities in this country? And following, can I say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, he talks about being callous. I will not take that. Following a debate last night where powerful contributions were made, particularly by the members from Stoke-on-Trent North, from Barking and Liverpool Wavertree, I will not take an accusation of callous from a man who allows anti-Semitism to run rife in his party.
The anti-Semitism thing is a bit of a deflection, but actually is a good thing to mention now. There are a number of MPs who did make very passionate remarks that are Labour MPs, and they pointed out that the Labour Party is not doing enough to deal with it. Someone could, of course, now say, oh, well, if you talk about the whole Labour membership, percentage is only 0.0. Who gives a fuck? It's the MPs we're focusing on here. There are at least a dozen that have very questionable backgrounds. even someone like Corbyn, who has stood with very hateful groups, it is a case that the party does need to deal with that. And I will say that if she wanted to go for a cheap point-scoring win, she got it with that. However, it was not relevant to the Windrush comments, so if anything, it's just deflection. Draw attention from the fact she didn't have a really good cement answer. She could have put one down if she had, well, actually proposals to deal with it. But as earlier noted, she deflected. And not just with that, but also with the race relation blah blah thing, audit, which quite frankly no one gives a shit about. It was a joke. It became one especially because a lot of people nowadays get jobs through affirmative action and colour-charted quotas. They should fuck and make up. Maybe. I would love Dolat. I would love to see someone shout "cuck." I think that would be hilarious. And it would certainly make me want to support the person who shouted it. So that those people who earlier I mentioned that spoke about anti-Semitism, they themselves were forced to be silent by their own party or threatened with, not being supported or allowed to run for re-election if they don't toe the party line. And that's whenever anti-Semitism came up, they were forced into silence, but then took anti-Semitic abuse in the process, which is unacceptable. We hear MPs take abuse from constituents and non-constituents and trolls all the time. However, a lot of Labour's problems are Labour themselves, which is quite sad, really. And Corbyn, he's such a soft touch that I don't think he will actually do what needs to be done to deal with the problem. And the problem can only really be dealt with publicly, because I think unless in this case you don't do it publicly, people won't believe you've actually addressed it. And as this problem is ongoing still, and it started with Ken Livingstone, although whether his claims are anti-Semitic or not, that's a debate for other people. It started then, and it's kept going. It's spiralling, it's growing, and it's going to get worse. I don't think it's going to get much better, to be honest. Run Against Squiddy in 2010, Miss Steam. That is hate speech, and there's only one thing we do with hate speech on this channel, Mr. Quacks. You should be put in timeout. You should be ashamed of yourself, Quaxotic. We'll have less of your hate speech here. Nobody should run against me, because I'm amazing. Anyway, I think I've run out of time for this now. Yes, we've gone just over an hour, and I have to be up at 6 AM for work. Yay me. And I've got to make adjustments and then go pine over the fact that I can't buy Alfarius yet. Anyway, I hope you found that somewhat informative. I know it was mostly focused on the Windrush crap, and that stuff is pretty dull, I guess. Hopefully if this is on next week, we'll do it again. Hopefully it'll be a more interesting topic. I'm not saying Windrush was totally dull, but when Corbyn wins, you know something was boring about it. He'll never rule America. Right, another person getting timed out. We can't have this. Unacceptable. I can't have this. You should be ashamed of yourself. There we go. Right, anyway, I am going to end this here. So thank you all for the 25 people who are listening. And have a lovely evening. Goodbye.